Hi everybody, I'm Andrea. In today's video I'm going to be doing standing up because I've never done a standing up video before and I thought I could just shake things up. So today I'm going to be doing my April wrap up, and in the month of April I read 8 books. Well, technically 7, but 8 in total, and they're mostly sci-fi. I read 5 sci-fi books, so let's talk about them. The first book I want to talk about is Annihilation, which I actually read in March but didn't get to. So Annihilation is a book that is the basis of the film of the same name, and it's very loosely based. They share the same themes but not exactly the same content. So this is a story about a woman who is a biologist who gets sent on an all-woman expedition to an area called Area X, otherwise known as the Southern Reach. And I believe geographically in the real world, the Southern Reach is somewhere in southern Florida. This is the 12th expedition into Area X. This area has been closed off and guarded off for decades, so nature has taken over, and there are so many different types of fauna and flora and individual landscapes that are found there that are seen nowhere else. So it's a very beautiful place. I felt it was kind of Garden of Eden-esque in the way that it was described in the book. The problem though is that this is the 12th expedition, meaning 11 expeditions before the all-woman one that we read about, they've all gone horribly wrong. Everybody basically dies every time you go and explore this area. They either kill themselves, kill each other, they disappear, they go crazy, they develop aggressive forms of cancer, and they just become the shell of themselves, shell of the people who they actually were. The latter two is what actually happened to the biologist's husband, who we learned was on the previous expedition. He came back but was a completely changed man, and he ended up dying because he developed this very aggressive form of cancer. We learned in the book that nobody is actually addressed by a name, everybody's addressed by their job title. The rest of the book deals with the biologist's experience into Area X. So most of the book is very slow paced. There's something very otherworldly that sits at the pit of the reader's stomach and just grows as you continue reading. It feels like when you're on a roller coaster and it's like that slow rise to the top before the drop. It's just full of like tension and like anxious energy. I really appreciated how beautiful the writing in this book is. It deals with depression through such an interesting lens. Although the word depression is never spoken, I believe, the subtext that surrounds it is really incredibly moving, and it's full of this very quiet kind of sorrow. But this is a sci-fi book, so if you do decide to pick this book up, expect weirdness, unexplained mysteries, and maybe aliens. I think that Annihilation is not a book for everybody because it has a very specific tone to it, and when I say it's slow paced, I really mean it's slow paced. Every detail is explained, and it's very easy to find yourself kind of zoning out and spacing out while reading the book. I know for me, I was about 2/3 in through the book when I had to switch to audiobook because I found myself just kind of not really reading, if that makes sense. And there's something very Kafka-esque about Vandermeer's writing as well, so I appreciate that in a way because it helps kind of build the sense of depression that the character herself feels, but it's really hard to pay attention at times. Perceived important storylines go nowhere, and vagueness is a veil that never really is taken off, but Annihilation is a book that just glows with iridescent energy and like this very eerie spirit. So if that's your type of writing, then you should definitely check it out. The next books I want to talk about are Scythe and Thunderhead, which I have right here. They look a little like this, and I might be kind of pretty biased because Neal Shusterman has been one of my favorite authors ever since I read The Schwa Was Here in the 4th grade, and I'm so glad to have the same feeling I had reading Scythe and Thunderhead that I had back then when I was a kid. So Scythe is a sci-fi fantasy book about a future where death is obsolete. Technology is so far advanced that basically people don't die anymore. People can constantly be rejuvenating themselves and changing their appearance, so you can be basically forever young for all eternity. Because of this, people are selected to become scythes, and scythes are basically this real-life grim reaper slash angel of death, and they get to glean people, and what that means is that they get to actually permanently and legally kill people to keep the population under control. And scythes have a certain quota they have to fill every year, and they get to decide when and how they get to do that. So if a scythe wanted to, they could kill their quota in one day, or it could be spread out, and it can be in any way they want. So you can imagine the type of power trip or power dynamics that could create. In addition to this, society is ruled by this all-seeing, omnipresent, sentient AI called the Thunderhead. And the Thunderhead is so ingrained into the culture and into the population that it's basically a second thought. Nobody really thinks about the Thunderhead, even though it's always watching. So Scythe follows Citra and Rowan, who are 16 years old, and they are Scythe apprentices, and it's about their journey into this new world that they haven't ever really known much about. Through them, we discover that the Scythedom is at the brink of turning a new dangerous page, with extremism and trouble boiling to the top. And that's really what I enjoyed most about Scythe. The discussion surrounding around politics, extremism, and radicalism are so parallel to our own current government, at least in the States, and I really appreciate this almost satire political commentary it has throughout the book. In Thunderhead, we learn more about the AI and how it works and what its intentions really are. It builds on the previous book's themes, but because Thunderhead is much more AI focused, it deals with a lot of creation and biblical themes as well. The Thunderhead is seen as almost, I want to say, religion in this society. Everybody worships it, everybody reveres it. They have this very blind faith into the Thunderhead, that the Thunderhead will always do good. So I thought the parallels between religion and the Thunderhead were very, very in your face, which I loved, I liked. And that's not to say the books didn't have problems. Because Thunderhead reorientates the focus onto the AI, our two protagonists, Citra and Rowan from Scythe, are kind of put into the backseat, and they have less development and less time, especially Rowan. In Thunderhead, a lot of very important and kind of traumatic events happen to Rowan, and he doesn't really get the development or time to kind of explore what happened to him. So I really wish there was a little bit more emphasis on Rowan's feelings, because I think his character was the one that suffered the most. There is a bit of insta-love going on in Scythe and Thunderhead, but I kind of expected it since it was a YA, and so I kind of like knew the drill in my head. But besides this, I mean, all the problems that these two books have seem so small compared to how original, creative, and ambitious this book is, and I really appreciate the themes. The themes are what I love the most about these books. I think they're really interesting and really relevant to today's society, and yeah, I just really enjoy these two books, and I hope to enjoy the next one. I then read two stories out of Ted Chiang's Stories of Your Life and Others, and he's the author of Arrival, and on the short story Arrival is based off of, so I was really interested in reading this book. I read the first two stories, which are called Towers of Babylon, Towers of Babylon, and Understand. And the first one is about the biblical story about the Tower of Babel, about these people are trying to build a giant tower all the way to heaven. And this story is kind of retelling. It's very parable-esque in the way it treats its prose, it's speculative fiction, and it's very short, kind of sweet, and I don't know, just a nice read. The second story I enjoyed a lot more, and that's called Understand. And Understand is about a man who is in a coma, and he's had extensive brain damage due to lack of oxygen in the brain. So the government gives him an experimental drug to use to regenerate the brain cells. But the side effects to that mean that he gains like superhuman abilities, and he's suddenly like this like mutant. Definitely had this kind of MK Ultra vibe because the government was kind of after him. And the climax of the story starts when our main character meets another man who's also gone through the same experimental treatment as he has. So it's kind of a little bit more action-y. It definitely has a Dark Matter vibe, Dark Fields vibe, and I don't know, I just really liked it. The next book I read was Astrophysics for People in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse Tyson, and what I liked about this book was the occasional very beautiful phrases, but the actual material inside the book just gave me flashbacks to freshman undergrad physics, and I failed the final so bad. I got like a 46% on it, but it was on a curve, so I ended up with a B+ in the class. But reading this book just reminded me of that, so I found myself like spacing out and kind of just like shuddering in memories. So it's good as a reflection to, you know, kind of really remember how small we are in the universe, but I wouldn't read it again. The next book I read was Song of Achilles, and I don't know why it took me so long to read this book, but I really enjoyed it. I literally binged it overnight on overdrive and my eyes hurt so much the next morning, but it was really worth it. The writing is so beautiful. I read the Iliad in high school and in college, and I've written many essays about it, and it was always kind of the bane of my existence, I felt, at least during freshman year in undergrad, but I've never really read it like this, and I really enjoyed how the author kind of delved into these could have been scenarios with Achilles and Patroclus. I think that's how he's saying his name. My favorite thing about this book was definitely the bittersweet ending. It's very poetic and very kind of sad, and I don't know, I just really enjoyed it. The last book I read was The Oracle Year, and I both liked and did not like this book, so like I wavered between like a 2 and a 3.5 star rating for this book. And it's written by Charles Soule, who has written for comics like Daredevil and She-Hulk, I believe. And the reason why I was wavering on it so much is that the story feels incomplete. So this is a story about a man named Will. Will's in his early 20s. He basically is like any other 20-year-old, mid-20-year-old out there. He hates his life and he just thinks he's pretty average. One day he goes to sleep and he dreams 108 predictions, of which just in his head just tells him 108 predictions that will happen in the world sometime in the future, and they're real, they come true, they start to come true. So naturally, Will, with the help of some dark web friends and his best friend, starts a website called The Site, and The Site releases predictions at random throughout the day or throughout the weeks or whatever. And so everybody is basically glued to their phones or glued to their TV to see what the next prediction the Oracle will give out. Besides this, a lot of like really important, influential people in the world are super interested in the Oracle because it predicts things. People like hedge fund managers and like Wall Street men, pharmaceutical companies, they all contact him and buy predictions from him for billions of dollars. Will and his friend, his best friend, are so rich that they basically bought themselves an island and made it into a country. So they're just rolling in money. But because of this, the government is kind of chasing or trying to look for him. They want to know who the Oracle is. So they're waiting for Will to make a wrong move. And one day, Will does make a wrong move. And it kind of goes on from that, this government hunt of this man. And it turns very action-y towards the second half of the book. It feels very like Bourne, like Jason Bourne-esque / like action movie / like typical summer blockbuster. It feels like very summer movie feel. And that's where my wavering, I think, really originates, because a lot of the development of characters is sacrificed for the next cool thing that happens in the book. A lot of the characters and supporting cast are very one-dimensional. I've never felt like I really knew Will's friends. They're all very diverse group of people, but I don't really know them, so when things happen or when they made choices that altered the plot, I couldn't find myself caring because I didn't know who they were. I didn't care. They're super flat characters. I mean, the same thing could be said for Will. Although Will had a little bit more development because he's our main character, there still wasn't enough information on him for me to really care about him or predict what was going to happen next. When he made choices, I was like a stranger reading his choices. I didn't know him in an intimate manner that sometimes I feel has to be developed in books. And I instantly compared this story with the Understand story from Stories of Your Life, because they're somewhat similar in the kind of government chasing aspect. And I think what worked in Stories of Your Life is that we really got to know that character. We were in his mind. As things got harder and harsher in Stories of Your Life, the writing got more maniacal and more aggressive and more hurried, so you could really feel that this character's motives are feeling crushed in. In Oracle Year, we were never invited inside of Will's mind, so I kept feeling that we were being told things were happening, but I could never really feel the impact of those things. I waver with the ending and the final score or final rating for this book because I really enjoyed the last standoff and ending. I thought it was super cinematic and the stakes were raised pretty high, and it was really interesting to see how everything was strategically played out. I enjoyed how this book kind of half forms really interesting ideas about free will and fate, but the flat characters really got to me, and I just wish it had a little bit more revision or a little bit more length to it so I could really dive in and enjoy it to the extent it deserves. So yeah, those are the books that I read in the month of April. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I'll see you next time. Bye!